What's good, nerds? Bandai has dropped some more characters on us. Personally, I didn't even think they would drop these two as characters. I thought they were going to be story villains or expert missions, but no. As it stands today, we are getting two new characters in Goku Black Super Saiyan Rose Ultra Super Villain and Vegeta Super Saiyan God Ultra Super Villain. Now it's time to break down the new characters, starting with Vegeta. The first clip we see is a basic attack string into a new unique super for Vegeta. Let's start with the basic attack string first. At the start, we can see that this is an alternate string or a full heavy string. You might not notice at first, but if you slow it down, you can see that the first input that we see is a charge attack, which indicates a heavy. So this could be an XY or just a regular heavy charge. Overall, nothing really too crazy about the string, but what intrigues me the most is the third hit. It could possibly be a stand break if you are on a map with a floor. Now, let's get into the new super for Vegeta. Thanks to the translations from the official Dragon Ball website, we can learn the name and what this super does. Its name is Wild Stinger, and apparently you can use supers and alts right after this super. So similarly to Justice Rush, Ray Blast, or Justice Blade. This super is pretty fast, which makes this pretty reliable on a various amount of knockbacks. However, looking at this move, I can only see one flaw. If you can vanish this mid-attack, it's not worth the effort, especially if when your opponent vanishes, you're still stuck in the animation. So let's hope it's an unvanishable like Justice Rush, where they have to evasive out of the entire thing, and not like Ray Blast, where you can vanish after the second hit. Next clip we see is another basic attack string. Just like earlier, we see the same charge attack. With this information, we can conclude that it is a heavy starter. We can also conclude that it is either the alternate or a heavy combo. The earlier combo we saw had to have been the all squares variation after the heavy. They must not have finished the string once they used Wild Stinger after the knockback. If this character is similar to his God predecessor, then we can assume all his strings are similar as well. In good God Vegeta strings, he has a perfect press on all his strings. For those that don't understand, basically if you match your input with the circle, you get a bonus damage on the attack. We can see in this clip that the string has a perfect press pretty early on, so this may indicate that it's the alternate heavy combo, assuming everything we talked about so far. Now back to the string itself. Again, nothing really too crazy about it, but what intrigues me the most is the final hit. The knockback looks like the alt knockback. If you look at base Vegeta strings, he has the same knockback properties as XY on base Vegeta. So if that indicates anything, that could mean for unvanishable alts. And you know that melee attack is going to do big boy damage because it's a perfect press input. Next is a new unique super for Vegeta. Thanks to the translations from the official website, we can see what this move is and what it does. The name is Big Bang Knuckle, and from reading the details, this is pretty much a combo ender. Since the initial bullet speed is fast, that means this will catch from a long knockback if you decide to delay it. My only concern with this super is you can vanish it before the punch. If so, then this move isn't going to be good. Hopefully the damage is decent enough to warrant using this, but I feel that the majority of the damage is going to be in the punch and not the key blast at the start. Next up is another basic attack string. This looks like the start of the light string that leads into the heavy string. You can tell by the sweep we saw. Seeing that sweep indicates that the strings we saw earlier had to have been the alternate string and the full heavy string. This being the case, we can only assume that this is 5 light into heavies. The Beyblade kicks is pretty cool, reminds me of Ginyu spin, but other than that, nothing about this string really stands out to me. So, on to the next one I guess. Up next, we see some basic attacks into Raid Blast. This is more than likely Vegeta's XY string. Things like Raid Blast is making a comeback, so that's cool. Guaranteed damage is always nice on cast characters. Nothing really too crazy to talk about here, so let's move on. Lastly, we see what looks to be an ultimate. And I say ultimate because of the super Wild Stinger that we talked about earlier. They wouldn't add that super if he didn't have an ult that could combo into it, right? From what we can see, this looks like a strike ultimate. But knowing Vegeta, this is more than likely a Ki Blast ult with a melee set up into a big Ki Blast or something. I'm a little concerned because this looks like one of those ults that will miss in Xeno netcode. Impulse Slash is a prime example of an ult not working. Overall, Vegeta doesn't really look all that impressive. And honestly, he doesn't look like a fun character either. His supers look cool, but their functionality online is to be determined. I doubt CECs will use them unless they are making a theme build, but I can only see this character getting a limited amount of use unless something cool is really found on him. Now for the character you guys are most excited for, Rose Goku Black. First off, we see a basic attack string into a new unique super. Since there isn't enough of the basic attack on screen to really dissect, we'll go straight into the super. Thanks to the translations from the official website, we know what the super is and what it does. This super is called Red Split Blade. It looks like a melee strike super. The translation also mentions that it can change performance. I can only assume that this means that the super has multiple inputs. In the clip we see here, we can assume this is one of the inputs. We see that this super launches you in the air when done, which makes me think you can pick this up with other supers or basic attacks. In the translation, it also mentions you can drown out the opponent's air bullet, which I don't know what they meant by this, but I can only assume it means canceling out basic ki blast. Next, we see a full basic attack string into a ki blast. And that ki blast looks interesting, but we'll get back to that in a bit. First, let's start with the string itself. Now, we are going to make the same assumption with Vegeta that all of these character iterations are very similar with their strings. At first glance, we can see there is some Fuse Zamasu influence within these strings. We can also see he kept his light dash attack string from his predecessor. I can only hope you can still dash cancel and get a stamina break from that part. The string seems to be extra long, which Rose is known for, and I can see a lot of people vanishing everything this character does pretty early. If Rose can't recover out of these moves as quickly as his predecessor, it's already not looking good for this character. A character with max style points does not bode well in Xeno. Now for the interesting part of this clip, the ki blast. This ki blast is giving me ideas for some nasty things. Like earlier, we see the scythe come out, which if we assume is right, it's the other input for Red Split Blade. It's got a nice range and the attack itself when launched seems pretty fast. This has the same knockback properties as Android 21's Charged Ki Blast. That means that he can pick this up with pretty much anything. This also means he can force out your stamina with this as well, because this is all unvanishable unless he gets close. This is going to be super nasty on CACs. I can already see the combo now. Red Split Blade into Destructive Ray, maybe into a Death Blade. It's going to be nasty. I say all of this, but I don't think this variation of the super is going to do much damage. The first variation we saw earlier is more likely the damage dealer than the combo extender. If you guys didn't notice, you can tell which supers are meant to be extenders and which aren't. You can tell by looking at the supers that do less damage than others. Obviously there are some exceptions, but majority of the supers follow that rule. Next up, we have another similar basic attack string to his predecessor. This looks very similar to Ro's alternate heavy string. If they are similar, then that means after those sword slashes he can dash cancel, which sets up for some nice beat. Nice to see that returning strings aren't being affected. Next up, we see a unique super for Rose. Thanks to the translations from the official Dragon Ball website, we know the name and the details for this super. The super is called God Spear, and apparently it's an unblockable super. Also, if you're close to your opponent, the super gains extra properties similar to Atomic Blast. God Spear can be followed up by other attacks, is that property. The details don't specify, but I'm assuming since it didn't mention supers like how Vegeta's did, you can only follow up with the dash attack. Now, when I hear unblockable attack, things become way more interesting. Rose's strings tend to make people block. A lot. No one really has enough knowledge of Rose to understand where they can perfect block in between his attacks. With that in mind, this super might be pretty nuts. At first glance, I didn't think this was going to be good because I thought the super itself came out too slow. If your character was fast enough, you could just sidestep before the attack goes through. But that's only if this was a single hitting move. You see, this is a multi-hitting move, so you might get clipped trying to sidestep this move. You better not backdash either because it does have some solid range, so you still might get clipped. I've said all that, but I do think in Xeno Netcode, this super isn't going to be as OD as it could be. Unless the recovery after using this move is good like Death Beam or Justice Kick, then this move isn't really going to see the light of day on CACs. Unless it's a content creator or someone's theme build. Now that I look closer at this super, I think the super restands. If you pay attention closely, you can see Trunks flinch, but you don't see his body start flying like any typical knockback. If this restands off-balance characters as well, this super might actually be cracked. Simply because this is what KBC was way back in the day. It won't be as deadly as KBC because you need to be within the ball to get the extra effect, but now that I've noticed this, I can definitely see more play for this super. Up next, we see Sudden Death Beam make a return and another basic attack string. We don't need to talk about Sudden Death Beam. right? We know what it does. Let's look at the basic attack string. From what we can see, this string has more Fuse Zamasu influence and a potential stand break. On the 4th hit, you could probably get a light stamina break off. On the 5th hit, if on the floor, you could get a heavy or a light stand break. Also, the stagger on some of these hits look crazy. I didn't mention it before because a lot of you won't see the vision, but for my tech guys out there, you're gonna have a ton of fun trying to find shit on this character. I can see a lot of potential for tech on Rose. Lastly, we get a glimpse of a new unique ult for Rose, and this John can teleport, kinda reminding me of Tapion's ult. You know, the one where he comes out of thin air to slice your sternum in half? I know a lot of you are probably turned off by that, but Tapion's ult is pretty solid. It just requires specific setups for it to work. Not to mention, it's a single hitting ult, which makes it deadly in its own right. If Rose's is anything similar, you guys are gonna have a love-hate relationship with it. Overall, Vegeta looks boring and Rose looks like style points to character. We all know who everyone is playing on launch, and we all know what moves are being used on CECs first. I do wish Vegeta had similar strings to his blue or base counterparts. Another God version isn't going to convince people to want to play him. Most people don't even play base God Vegeta now. But I digress. Like and sub. Okay, bye.